The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often, he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome back, folks. Today I'm going to be joined in just a minute by James Anderson, a friend of a lot of years. He is the CEO of a company called Guanajuato Silver, which a lot of you are already familiar of. Guanajuato is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol GSVR. And here in the US on the OTCQX, it's listed as GSVRF. I want to point out, too, that since the middle of February, their listing on the Venture Exchange has gone from Tier 2 to a graduation of a Tier 1 listing, which is the highest tier you can get on the Toronto Venture Exchange before a company, if it wants to do so, is eligible to uplist to the full Toronto Stock Exchange, maybe to one of the major exchanges in the US or what have you. So, and that speaks well, I think, among other things, to the good company building job that James has done over the last 4 or 5 years. And I followed Guanajuato Silver's story pretty much from the outset. We got in slightly late after the stock was at 3 or 4 cents. We got in a little bit above that, unfortunately, but still looking pretty good after about 4 years or so, even though we did see higher share prices for a while. And we're going to recap all of that. But before we recap that and today's news and give you kind of an overall update and progress report, the usual preliminaries here you'll see on the screen. James and or myself might be making what could be construed as forward-looking statements. There's a lot of different moving parts, several different projects that the company has, etc. So make sure you kick the tires, spend some time getting to know the company better. Here again is a little bit more detail on some of their contact information. Visit their website, look at their presentation. They've got a lot of interactive stuff as well out there. Follow them on social media, etc. Secondly, if you're not already in our audience at the National Investor, make sure you avail yourself of that from time to time as circumstances and a news warrant. We have updates on all of our recommended companies, including Guanajuato Silver. So make sure that you follow me. From time to time, we put out precious metal specific information. We've got kind of a wave of that going out these days. A short time ago, I talked about gold primarily, but also silver. And of course, Guanajuato's, the lion's share of their income comes from both gold and silver. But I put out a video tutorial a while ago that's on my YouTube page. I'll have the specific link to it in the notes to this interview, but it's called "This is Still Not Your Father's Gold Market." And though we have seen the gold price set new record after new record for the last few months now, silver remains a laggard, and both gold and silver related equities, by and large, there have been some exceptions and it's looking better in the recent past, but still, retail investors are really not in these names. And when you look at Guanajuato Silver's own chart, we're probably about a third right now of the share price high of the last couple of 3 years. And that's with the company doing better than it has since it started. In fact, today's news that prompts this update, and I'm recording this when I say today, you may not see it for a couple of days, but I'm recording this on Monday, April 28th with James. The company came out today and released its Q4 news from 2024, showing good revenue growth, third straight quarter of positive mine operating income. And, one of the reasons why Guanajuato Silver has not always resonated with investors, I think, is that this company building story has taken place in fits and starts at times, with some cost pressures at times, but now things are humming on most, if not all, cylinders. Cash flow is positive, operating income is positive, and there's a lot of exciting stuff going on right now, not the least of which is metals prices, because I am one that believes that the long-term bullish case for both gold and silver near term, and I think this will encompass base metals down the road further, is very, very bullish. For a variety of reasons that James and I talk about from time to time, and that I've been visiting with others about and discussing elsewhere. So you're getting in or a new or for the first time perhaps on this story at a point when the market really has not come to understand yet that a lot of the growing pains Guanajuato Silver has had are in the rearview mirror. Doesn't mean there won't be others to come, but things are doing very, very well. I'll ask James to update us on a couple of specific projects of now the biggest and really the fastest growing, as you saw already from its slide, the fastest growing silver producer in Mexico these days. And it's really getting to be a lot more than that too, as you're going to be learning anew. And here is my old friend James Anderson, the CEO of Guanajuato Silver. James, glad to catch up with you.
Great to be here, Chris. Good to see you.
For folks who aren't familiar with Guanajuato Silver, first off, I want to go kind of back to the beginning and talk about, we'll give you a Cliff Notes version of the company building that you've been doing for the last several years. And of course, for those that don't know or forgotten, I've known James for a lot longer than prior to his starting what was called Vangold, and then later changed to Guanajuato Silver because of course, the company is anchored in the beautiful and historic city and historic mining city of Guanajuato, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But as you've built that company, over several years, you started with the El Cubo complex, that and the other acquisitions since then, as we discussed along the way, you got it astonishingly good terms. And so you're able to put together a nice multi-asset, multi-producer for not an awful lot of money. And so you're at a place now, we're starting with El Cubo, which is now the basis of one hub and spoke operation, as you call it. You're now up to a total of 6 producers when you add everything else together, as I've been showing here. So take us back to the beginning and give us a quick Cliff Notes version of how you got from day one to today.
Right. So it was about 5 years ago that I took my first visit to Guanajuato. I took control of the company called Vangold, which is, we changed the name to Guanajuato Silver. Vangold at that time had a development project, which we still have, called Pinguico. And what I thought that I saw at the time 5 years ago was a possibility of being able to consolidate one of the great silver producing regions on the planet. People have been mining silver and gold in Guanajuato for 450 years, but over the last several decades, the ownership structure of a lot of the mines and the claims had been divvied up into different companies. So we got an opportunity in 2021 to purchase El Cubo from Endeavor Silver. We did that. As you stated, Chris, we've always paid pennies on the dollar for these assets. El Cubo was closed at the time. Endeavor had paid $200 million for that asset several years earlier. Because it was closed and there was kind of an ebb in the silver price and in the market, we paid $15 million for it only. And then just months later, we got the opportunity to buy all of the Mexican mining assets of Great Panther. They had run into problems with a mine that they were spending lots and lots of money on in Brazil. And they're, smaller, but all operational mines in Mexico became, on the for sale block, again, for just about $15 million, the same price as we paid for El Cubo. So in that way, we were able to buy 2 additional mines and another production facility in Guanajuato. That's the Valenciana mine with the Cata processing plant, and San Ignacio mine a little further west. We also got in that transaction, kind of thrown in for free, really, our Topia mine in Durango, which is, it's a little further afield than the consolidation play within Guanajuato, but nonetheless, it's very high grade, and it's an important part of our production profile today. So that's sort of the history of where we started. Along the way, I thought that we were going to have a much more robust move in silver sooner. That didn't happen, and that's when you buy fixer-uppers cheap, that's great, but you need money to be able to fix them up, and that was a challenge for a couple of years. But I think most of that's behind us at this point.
It has been, and as I said earlier, you've had some growing pains along the way, financial, operationally, but a lot of those are under your belt now. We're going to get in just a minute to the latest news that you put out. Almost a few days before we recorded this, on your latest quarterly production figures. More important, the financial metrics, which have been improving. Going back to the different projects, there are, and you and I have talked about this before in other settings, despite the fact that there's been 400 plus years of mining in this area, it's like a lot of places that our viewers may be familiar with. Yeah, you've had a lot of mining going on in the past, but modern mining methods that have come about in just the last few decades are opening up a lot of what was left behind, which when you get right down to it is probably most of the resources to be exploited, frankly. And you've got a number of different opportunities as we go forward to increase production beyond what you've done already, make new discoveries and so forth. I know at El Cubo, you recently put out back on the 30th, the news that we already knew, this was just the official filing of the technical report update for El Cubo, but you've been able to grow the resources there pretty nicely, haven't you?
We have, and that takes into account the mining that we've done there for 4 years.
Right.
The expansion of the overall resources at Cubo, I think, is noteworthy. I would also point out that we did exactly the same thing at San Ignacio
Mhm.
about 18 months earlier. And it is part of an ongoing process that we've got internally to put out new 43-101 compliant resource estimates at all of the mines. So we've done San Ignacio and now El Cubo. You can expect the same to be done with Valenciana here within just the next couple of months, I think, Chris. Topia will take a little while longer, but you can expect a new 43-101 compliant resource estimate from Topia towards the end of this year or maybe early in 2026.
Neat, neat. Now, as I alluded to a minute ago, on the 28th, you announced production results and financial results likewise. Production, the total silver equivalent was just over 733,000 ounces, gold, silver, a little bit of lead and zinc, as I'm showing here on the screen. More important was the positive mine operating income, a 416% improvement over the previous quarter. That's a big number. EBITDA jumped even more from the previous quarter. And I want to unpackage both of those subjects as we go along here and talk about the production profile going forward and what you're seeing in the near term, as well as the improved financial metrics and what caused that, hopefully, along with strong metal prices, what might cause that to do even better in the future. So as I alluded to a few minutes ago, you've had some operational challenges, but basically you've been going along, one quarter closer to 700,000 ounces, next quarter up closer to 900,000 ounces. What are you looking at near term is something that will kind of break you out of this range that's existed since about the end of 2022, I think it was.
Gotcha. Okay. You've mentioned a lot of different things in there.
Right.
Let me try and comment on one at a time. First of all, I think it's really important to note that Guanajuato Silver is a precious metals producing company. So you mentioned some of the lead and zinc. Only about 8% of our revenue comes from base metals. And that, I think, is a really important distinction about our company in comparison to some of the other small to mid-tier Mexican silver mining companies. A lot of them call themselves silver mining companies, but they really are lead and zinc mining companies, and maybe only a third of their revenue comes from silver. A little over half of our revenue comes from silver, and about 40% comes from gold.
Right.
Right. So we really we're very different in that way. We're very much a precious metals company with a silver focus. So I think that's quite important. With regards to production numbers, and as you mentioned, they've declined somewhat over the last couple of quarters. We had kind of a spiky quarter in the first quarter of 2024.
Mhm.
The reason for that, and you can see it on our presentation, and we have little bars of production per quarter, and then it's one spiky, and then it comes back down again.
Well, we'll put it on here as you're talking.
Sure. Okay, great. And the reason for that, and I think it's an important explanation to sort of figure out where we are in that. We were doing a fair bit of third-party milling
Mm.
for for the world's largest silver mining company that has a lot of dormant assets in the Guanajuato area. So they're not in production right now, but they do have some sort of leftover mined material around. We were doing some third-party processing for them. I don't like to call it toll milling. It's more of a profit sharing agreement is what we had. That worked very well. We have done a little bit more with them, but that's really the reason why that spiky profile that we've got. So other than that, you've got real modest additional declines in production. And why is that? I would suggest that it's almost exclusively because we have much more discipline in the mines about what we're mining and making sure that it's profitable. When we first got going, there was kind of a charge, okay, well, let's produce and let's produce as much as possible. Well, that's great, in a roaring bull market, but we didn't really have that the last few years. And so discipline within the production profile, making sure that the ounces that we mine are profitable, that's really the driving force between the mild consolidation in production.
Well, and that's the other main focus, and I'm glad that you put it the way you did, James, because what hasn't been going sideways are your financial metrics that have been improving very, very nicely. And
Right.
that's one of the big reasons for that, for which, of course, you should be congratulated. I don't think investors quite are embracing that again yet and realizing how important that is. The other thing that's helped, and we don't need to get too deep in the weeds on this, but for a while, you and everybody else that's a producer in Mexico, your financials were getting hit by the strength of the Mexican peso because, among other things, that's what you've got to pay your local costs and labor and whatnot in. And the peso, of course, has come substantially off the boil from its peak of several months back. I think it stabilized recently. We don't know where it's going to go in the coming days, but by appearances, the currency markets have kind of readjusted a little bit violently at times because of all of the tariff on again, off again talk and all of the rest of this stuff. But more important for where you're operating, obviously, is the fact that along with having to pay attention to what the renewed president of the U.S. Is doing, President Trump, of course. And now, just as we're wrapping this discussion up, and I'm editing this, Mark Carney being reelected as Prime Minister up in Canada, which doesn't have a big bearing really on what's going on in Mexico. But the big one is Claudia Sheinbaum, who was elected last year as Mexico's president. And, I don't know how her tenure is going to impact you in a big way, plus or minus, compared to what you were used to before. What does seem to be true, however, and you and I talked about this in the past, is that the book on her seems to have been fairly accurate. She's not an ideologue. She's a pragmatist. She wants things to work. She wants to grow the economy. Yes, she's part of the whole green thing as well as everything. But she does realize that mining is a big business in Mexico and needs to stay that way. And I've talked to a couple of other companies recently who operate down there who've been pleasantly surprised that garden variety permits have not only, not gone away, their approval has sped up in the recent past.
Right. So, we can start with Miss Scheinbaum.
Mhm.
I'm not, quite as enamored with her performance as maybe some of the other mining CEOs. First of all, one thing that you hear an awful lot of, Chris, in terms of in the mining commentary sphere that we're in, is that, well, mining is so important to Mexico. Well, it's about 3% of GDP. So it may not be quite as important as it once was, and it may not be quite as important as what some people think. I think Ms. Scheinbaum has a lot of other things on her plate right now, to focus on. In terms of the interface with mining companies, I agree with you entirely. She's much more pragmatic than AMLO, her predecessor, who was much more of a philosopher king, right? And therefore, I think that her decisions and the decisions of her government and the choices of her ministers in charge of various departments, including the mining portfolio, I think are going to be much more pragmatic, much more realistic. That party, and especially AMLO's unhappiness about open pit mining, I think will continue. Now, my view is that that's an opinion that really left-wing thinkers from all over the world have. So it's not something that's peculiar to Mexico
Oh, not
only,
at all.
right? Trying to get open pit mines permitted in the Western United States for the last many years has been very, very difficult. Is there a ban on them? No, but if it takes 17 years to get approvals, well, then there may as well be, right?
Right.
In Mexico, if our mines are operational and they are underground mines and they are very clean mines and we have all of our necessary permits. So a lot of those things, are kind of behind us, and that's not an accident. I mean, when we chose these assets, I could see some of the political machinations of the world and Mexico in particular. And so I think that having underground assets, high-grade assets in communities that understand mining, right? And in Guanajuato, I mean, there was no Guanajuato before the mining industry. This is a mining city. So that helps us a great deal, and I think that will hold us in good stead as we expand our current operations and as we continue the process of acquiring nearby assets as well.
Well, and I'm glad that you finished up with that line of thought, because it's what I wanted to go into next as we wind down. And that is the fact that you are now the biggest employer, single employer in the city of Guanajuato. You're pushing 1,000 employees these days.
That's correct. That number does include our workforce at Topia as well.
Right. Okay. And you've done a great deal. I mean, it's very, very important these days, whatever the other regulations and roadblocks and whatnot to mining and extractive industries generally might be. One of the things that almost everywhere will help grease the skids, all things being equal, is if you're an important part of the community, welcomed by the community, you're a big employer and do a lot of other stuff. And recently you guys have helped to fund a couple of medical centers.
Right?
You've been involved in environmental and water projects. Tell us a little bit about those things.
Well, I guess let me back up one step and
Sure.
start with 100% of the people who work for us in Mexico are Mexican.
Yeah.
And that's a very different approach to a lot of the other expatriate companies, whether they be American or Canadian or Australian or British. When they go to Latin America, they tend to bring an expatriate management level, which I don't believe that in Guanajuato, in Mexico today, is necessary or needed. So sometimes people ask me, Chris, so like, what's your relationship like with the community? And my answer is, well, we don't have a relationship with the community. We are the community, right? Somos Guanajuato. We use that in places in some of our promotional literature. So I do not like the idea of expatriate companies kind of doling out money here and there, right? This isn't charity. This is working with the communities that we are embedded with, where all of our workers are from. And so putting a little bit of money, but a lot of effort back into organizing cleaning of a riverbed, or as you mentioned, providing, again, a little bit of money, but some organizational prowess to move forward some medical facilities, some medical clinics in all of our communities. We talk about the communities or the villages. Guanajuato is it's a small city. There's about 200,000 people there. Where one of our bigger operations is, El Cubo, is just south of there, and there's little tiny communities of a couple thousand people kind of along the way. I think in North America, maybe we would just call them neighborhoods, right? And the interface between us and those people is really important, providing employment. And okay, well, we drive big mining trucks right through the community or past the community every single day. Well, we've got to give a little bit of love back, right, to those communities to make sure that they see the mining company and the mines themselves as being helpful to their community, as being a net positive to their community. So that's the approach that we take, and I think that overall it's worked really well.
Well, and also with a history. I mean, you've told the story before, and you're doing a lot of your literature online and so forth. And this is a good time as we wind down again to remind you folks that make sure you spend some time at Guanawato's website, follow them on social media. A lot of cool history there, a lot of history I never knew until James changed the name of the company and started explaining why to all of us. This was a company that once was in its own right under a previous operator on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, that's absolutely that's absolutely true.
Everybody's
And
long since forgotten that. People might, people always remember that Homestake Mining, when we want to talk about gold, once upon a time was a venerable company on the New York Stock Exchange that was the only big winner during the Depression years. But what was the name of the old company that was was in
it,
charge of
it
it?
it was the Penguico Mines
That's
Company, the
right.
Penguico Mines and Beneficiary Company, something like that.
Yeah. So again, this is a place that mining is far from foreign to them. It's part of the culture, has been for a long time, and makes everything work very nicely.
Well, just a final comment on that, if I may. You can even go back further than that, right? So
Hmm.
the laydown yard, which is now a museum, it is our Valenciana Museum. The stone walls surrounding that area have like triangular shape buttresses on top of the stone walls. Those represent the crown of Spain because 300, 400, almost 500 years ago, most of the silver and gold that was extracted there was sent as tribute back to
Right.
Spain, back to the crown. The managers, the owners of the mine at that time were granted royal title to the area, and they were made. I think the English equivalent would be counts of the area. So the history that surrounds these mines is fantastic. In a modern context, why is that important? Well, because there's all kinds of old stockpiles, waste dumps, tailings facilities that have lots of silver and gold in the area that we can access and make some money on.
Neat, neat. And you've already been taking advantage of that, as we've said. Uh, Finally, tell us a little bit about how things are going at the Bullion and online store. We talked about this when you first brought this out. I'm still astonished. I mean, a lot of folks now have heard of the MAGA hat based on silver that you
Right,
guys came out with.
right. That's
Um,
right. I've got one right here. There you
yeah,
go.
I can't believe that
Make
no
make
one.
silver great again.
Yeah, and I can't believe nobody's come out with a gold one, MAUGA.
Right, right.
That astonishes me that nobody's come up with that idea yet. But you've got that available. You sell your own locally hallmarked bars and coins, and you've got a sale for upcoming Cinco de Mayo just a few days after we start circulating this video. So tell us about the Bullion store.
The Bullion store is lots of fun. I'll, be very blunt. It's not like we make an enormous amount of money on it, but we make a ham sandwich on it. It's lots of fun. Our coins, they're not, particularly different than other 1 ounce silver coins that you can buy, Chris, except ours are amazingly beautiful.
They are.
And so we get a lot of notoriety about that. People like to buy the coins. We have beautiful 10-ounce bars that are also for sale. The markup is minute. Again, we're not trying to make an enormous amount of money on it. It's really supposed to promote Guanajuato silver and the good work that we're doing there. But the coins, the logo that we have, it's really cool. A lot of people look at that and go, "Yeah, that's really neat. I'd like to own some of those." So yeah, I encourage all of your viewers go to the Bullion store on the website at guanajuato.com. It's a lot of fun for us.
Neat. Well, and in the notes that go along with this video post too, we'll have that specific link along with the general website and presentation link and so forth. So fun stuff. Well, James, congratulations on the company building job you've done to date.
Thank you.
And I think that as prices of the metals stay fairly stable, let alone down the road, I think base metals are going to catch up with precious metals. Silver will catch up more so with gold eventually. Right. Gold's been a nice surprise for all of us, and it helps out too when it comes to the financial statement, because and we had the chart up here a minute ago. I'll show it again. All of your revenue, say for 8 or 10 so percent of it, is gold and silver, so right. That's important. So great stuff. Any near-term markers we should be looking for?
Well, I think more of the same. We've had 3 consecutive quarters now of positive mine operating income. Look for more of the same. We make incremental changes. As I mentioned before, and as your viewers will know just logically, when you start a company like this and put mines that have been underinvested into the portfolio, it takes a little while to change things around and move things forward. From a standing start 4 years ago, we will do something like $100 million in revenue this year. And I think we've built a fantastic platform for growth in the precious metals industry in central Mexico, and expect that to continue. We ain't stopping yet.
Nice. Well, great stuff. Again, congratulations, James. Folks, one more time, make sure you keep up with Guanajuato Silver and their progress. Visit their website. Make sure you get on their mailing list. If you're not already on my own, make sure you join our list as well. Follow both of us on social media as well. From time to time when news comes out, we both recirculate that. And again, we're looking for even bigger and better things down the road. So James, thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll have to do this again before too long.
It's always a pleasure, Chris. Thanks so much.
Take care.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.